Coming to you, pre-recorded from Casa de Regis in Culver City, California, it's the Reggie N Regis Podcast!
What's up? My name is Reggie Bobrin. Welcome to the Reggie N Regis Podcast. To my left is my brother in smack, my partner in crime, Regis.
Yes, Regis, one name, like Madonna or Cher, but younger and way less talented.
Today, on episode 2, we will be talking about the NFL free agency. But before we start with that, I just wanted to send a shout out to just everybody out there listening, everybody out there in general. Just, coronavirus, obviously. I hope everybody's safe. I hope everybody's families are safe. Please remember, wash your hands, social distance. It's very important that we try to contain this as fast as we can. That way we can get back to our regular lives and just have fun again.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're starting to see the impacts that this is having on everyone. Like, we got friends who are, out of work for the time being. So if everyone takes care of themselves, we can get back to normal here soon. And all I can say is thank you to the NFL for giving us content this week we can talk about with what has been an absolutely crazy free agency period. Because without that, we would be talking about either horse racing or Australian rules football. Thank you to Pat McAfee for highlighting how awesome that is for us.
That indeed. Again, we will be talking, we're going to break down everything about the NFL, or at least as much as we can, in about an hour or so. And an hour-ish, there you go. And, the topics, obviously, the biggest domino of them all, Tom Brady, Buccaneers.
Yeah, well, that depends on who you ask of what the biggest one is, because if you're a Browns fan, you're thinking it's Jack Conklin because Baker Mayfield's got some protection, or if you're the Watt family, it's probably Derek signing as a fullback with the Steelers to play with his brother TJ. But yes, obviously, Tom Brady is going to Florida, not to retire, but to play 2 more years in a Bruce Arians-led Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense.
And we will also be discussing the DeAndre Hopkins trade to Arizona Cardinals, the Todd Gurley release from the Rams, and obviously signing with the Falcons. We're also going to break down the Amari Cooper
re-signing for 5 years for $100 million in Dallas.
Yeah.
Because that actually has a connection to Gurley that we will get to later on.
Yeah, that indeed. We're also going to just talk about some unsigned free agents as of right now, and some potential trade partners, hopefully, in like upcoming future
for a couple quarterbacks that we don't know where they're going to be playing in 2020 yet.
Some notable names that you might know of. And with that being said, we are going to start with Mr. Tom Brady. Now, when I found out about this on Tuesday morning, first of all, that when he was like not re-signing with New England, I was a bit shocked because if I would have had just 2 to 3 hours, I would have just put him on, just re-signing with the Patriots. When I woke up on 8 a.m. and I saw that he had that Instagram post of just he wasn't going to resign, I thought, wow, I wonder where he's going. And then a couple hours later, you hear the Buccaneers completely.
That's completely out of left field.
Yeah. And it was just like, wow. But you know what, the more I thought about it, the more I loved it.
Well, you have to think with Tampa Bay last year. They had Mr. Inconsistent Jameis Winston. Like, he would have a game.
Crab legs.
Yeah, crab legs. So you'd have a game where he'll throw, 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, and then he'll have another game where he'll throw 200 yards and 5 interceptions.
With that being said, they still went 7-9.
Yeah, they still went 7-9. Now, mind you, we're going to get to, part of the reason why they went 7-9 in a second. But with who they have as a coach with Bruce Arians, who maybe only has a couple years left in coaching, and all the young talent they have coming up, it's feasible for them to be in a win-now mode, and I think that's what they were trying to do.
Oh, of course. I mean, again, the more I thought about it, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Godwin. Who was I thinking of? Goodwin. Godwin, O.J. Howard, the other tight end that they have.
Cameron Brate.
And the potential free agent signings, because there are reports that there are some veterans out there who are interested in signing with the Bucs because of Brady's presence.
And not only that, because of Arians' coaching.
That too. And we don't know what they're going to do in the potential upcoming draft right now. So this could actually kind of make out to be pretty well for the Bucs. I mean, I'm not going to say that they're Super Bowl contenders right now, even with Brady, but division champions, a potential playoff run, I think is not out of the mix.
Yeah, it's not out of the mix. You have to remember how tough the NFC South is, right? Because you have the Saints, who have Drew Brees, who's the ageless wonder. I mean, still completed 30 straight passes in a game late in the season last year on Monday Night Football. You have the Falcons, who still have Matt Ryan, which they don't have a lot surrounding him, but he is a veteran quarterback that can do something out of nothing. And then you have the Panthers, who, as we'll get to later, is a big question mark.
Yeah, and as we're gonna kind of go through, the Saints did sign Emmanuel Sanders.
Yes, and it's a very good number 2 opposite, who I think the best receiver in the NFL is Michael Thomas.
DeAndre Hopkins. But that's my personal opinion.
We'll get to that later.
We'll get to that later. And the Falcons signed Todd Gurley. Now, we don't know how much he has left, per se, but we'll see. But with that being said, let me get your opinions on Brady signing with the Bucks.
I like I said, I think it's good for the young weapons they have coming up. Clearly, they are in win now mode, and with all the young weapons that they have, they just signed Evans to a massive deal a couple years ago. They have Godwin, who's gonna be getting paid here soon. OJ Howard, if he has a breakout year, he could command some money because, let's face it, the tight end market is rather weak aside from the top guys, basically your Travis Kelce's of the world. So I think they're definitely looking at winning now. Now, they have questions at running back, right? Peyton Barber started to emerge a little bit at the end of last year, and they still need to rebuild that offensive line. Yeah, they were kind of mid-pack, but you also have to remember, Brady's not the most mobile guy, and a lot of his success over the years in New England has been attributed to the fact that they have had a lot of great offensive linemen in New England. If you go back to Matt Light and Dan Connolly and those sorts of guys.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it from obviously everything as you just alluded to. I mean, it's just like absolutely correct. They are a middle of the pack as far as protection. As far as I think they were dead last in actually in run blocking.
Yeah,
that's fine. But you know what? I'm looking at it just from the aspect of Brady being rejuvenated. And again, call me crazy. This might be the best pair of weapons he's ever had. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to break records. I'm not saying he's going to throw for 50 touchdowns.
2007, anyone?
Right. But, I mean, you think of Mike Evans in his prime. Chris Godwin. Two wide receivers who went over, 1,100 yards?
They both went over 1,100 yards, and O.J. Howard last year finally started looking like he was coming into his own. He's going into like year 4 or 5 or something like that.
I mean, I can almost compare this to what Joe Montana, the effect that he had on the Chiefs. I don't know if you remember that back in like 93, how the Chiefs were, I mean, they were a good team, good solid team.
They had a lot of good defensive players, though.
But how Joe's presence just kind of lifted that team. And that's actually on YouTube. If anybody wants to look it up, there's a YouTube clip of when Montana was first traded to the Chiefs and basically how veterans were showing up for like OTAs, things that they normally never do. And they actually made a run to the AFC Championship game that year.
In 93, they lost to Buffalo in the final of the 4 years that Buffalo lost their
Right. And even though they made it to the playoffs the following year, I mean, I think that kind of impact, especially with, our generation's Joe Montana. I mean, I think Brady can have that same impact just with his presence alone. Guys are going to just want to do well. They're going to want to play hard. They want to just ball out. And obviously Brady, and look, I'm not one of those guys. Like, I still think he's a hell of a quarterback. Everybody's talking about, Tom fell off. Who did Tom throw to last year?
He had Mohamed Sanu. He had Julian Edelman. Yeah, he didn't have Gronk anymore, and I think that was probably more of the reason behind his statistical decline than anything.
Look, I'll be honest. It was painful watching the Patriots offense last year. I mean, it was God freaking awful. I mean, I felt bad for Tom after, and look, I'm a Giants fan. I felt bad for Brady.
Well, I'll put it this way. I'm a Browns fan, and I'm thinking, Brady finally has an average offense around him now. Boo-hoo, cry me a river.
I don't know. I mean, we'll wait to see, but just give you the quick terms of the contract. So it's 2 years, $50 million, fully guaranteed. So Tom's going to get his money, which, look, I'm all about guys getting their money, especially a guy like that who's taking pay cut after pay cut after pay cut just to help the team. I'm glad he's getting the money. It is cap friendly for the Bucks. The 2 years comes with a $9 million incentive clause for those 2 years, I should say. And also no franchise tag and no trade clause. So that kind of leaves the door open that maybe he'd want to play after 45.
Yeah. Who's franchise tagging a 45-year-old quarterback?
Hey, look.
You have to think, in between now and 2 years from now when that contract's up, Patrick Mahomes is going to get paid. Like, we're talking close to $40 million a year paid. So with the way the franchise tag works, right, you average the top 5 salaries at the position, and then that's what the guy gets paid. You think anybody's giving Tom Brady that money?
Well, I'm just saying it's going to open the door. I mean, like, I don't know why that's there, but it's there. But it does leave kind of an interesting kind of, it's just like, oh, does he want to play after 45? Like, I mean, that might be interesting. But we'll focus obviously year by year. But I did find that to be a little bit interesting. With that said, do you have any predictions on Brady's upcoming season?
Look, Tom Brady has been in one system his entire career, right? So we haven't really seen what he has to do in order to adapt. That being said, Bruce Arians is an offensive mind that has gotten the best out of a lot of people in his career. So that could either mesh very quickly or that might take some time. So we could be looking at anything from, I mean, if disaster strikes, say one of the weapons go down, it could be as bad as 6-10. I don't think that'll happen. But they could win their division and maybe go 12-4.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I mean, Arians is obviously worked with Andrew Luck when Andrew Luck was a rookie. We saw
work with Ben Roethlisberger,
Big Ben, Carson Palmer. He rejuvenated Carson Palmer's career. Carson Palmer was near MVP. I mean, 2015?
2015, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, he's the quarterback whisperer. Do we dare say? I hate that. I fucking hate that term. But I mean, not that he has to really do any kind of what's the word? He needs
Coaching.
to do anything. Yeah, exactly. With Tom Brady, Tom Brady probably knows more about playing that position more than a lot of guys will ever forget.
But at the same time, though, if you're Tom Brady and you've been in this league for 20 years, you don't want to be the guy starting a rebuilding project for a new coaching staff and new players and a new front office. You want to go somewhere with someone who knows what they're doing in running an offense so you can get as much juice out of the last years of your career that you can. Yeah.
I mean, I personally think the Bucs will win the division.
You think so? Even over the Saints, who still have all those weapons.
Yeah.
Again, Carolina is a big question mark now with Bridgewater. That really opens up that offense.
Yeah. I mean, again, I just a gut feeling. I like the young talent. I mean, their defense is actually with Todd Bowles. They're very formidable. I mean, they played actually, especially in the second half, they played very well. A lot of the games that they went 7-9. A lot of the games that they lost were within less than 6 points. I mean, they lost like 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, and a lot of that can be attributed to, Jameis being inconsistent.
Yeah, Mr. Crablegs.
Yeah, so of course, there's also begs one other question on the Brady side of things. How is Giselle going to thrive in the land of retirees and chain restaurants? I mean, Tampa isn't exactly, New York or LA or Milan or anything like that.
Well, from everything that we're hearing, the family, Giselle and the kids, are going to go to Miami, which is a 4-hour commute from Tampa. I mean, driving. I'm pretty sure Tom's not going to drive. I mean, so it's probably...
he's not driving through the swamp and the Everglades and all the mosquito buzz.
Right. It's probably less than an hour plane ride. Or maybe an hour in itself. But I think he'll be okay. And I think that warm weather, obviously, especially during the November and December months, is actually going to be very beneficial to Tom. It's going to be something, I don't know, I just get this gut feeling like just being away from the Patriots, and not saying that he wanted to leave, but now that accepting that reality of, okay, I'm not there anymore. I'm with a new organization, a new coach, better skilled players, at least on offense.
Right.
And it's just going to rejuvenate him. He's going to kind of, and look, and Brady's one of those guys. Like, when he gets that feeling, it's just like, hey,
I mean, he can do magic. And again, maybe he felt like his time with New England had run its course. Because if you think about it in sports, every relationship, and it doesn't matter what sport it is, it runs its course eventually.
Yeah, or either that or obviously the Patriots didn't want him. The Patriots are ready to move on, which, I mean, it's understandable. I mean, obviously, look, like, 2 years ago, Belichick wanted to move on from Brady, and then Robert Kraft stepped in. This time, it seems as Robert Kraft was just like, Bill, it's your ship. You call the shots and just kind of just do what you think is best.
And of course, as has always been the case in New England under Bill Belichick, we never know what goes on behind closed doors.
Exactly. And that's why they're the Patriots. And I wouldn't necessarily count them out either. We'll see what they do. And with that being said, there is another
1,000-yard rusher we need to talk about.
No, actually, I wanted to talk about the trade. The biggest trade so far. Well, catastrophe, whatever you want to call it.
Well, again, the reason I said 1,000-yard rusher is because Tom Brady is a 1,000-yard rusher over the course of his 20-year career cumulatively. But of course, the one I'm talking about here is David Johnson being traded to the Houston Texans for DeAndre Hopkins. And the terms of the deal are David Johnson, a 2020 second and a 2021 fourth for Hopkins and a fourth rounder in 2020. And when I first heard about this, I thought to myself, Bill O'Brien being the new GM in Houston, why the fuck would you do this?
I don't know if he's literally trying to sabotage his own career and
Deshaun Watson's.
Yeah. How would you like to be Deshaun Watson? How would you like to have woken up on Monday morning and see that, let's be honest, the best player, as of right now at least, the best player on that team
easily
is gone. And you're thinking, okay, who am I going to throw to? Will Fuller, who
is injury prone?
Yeah, injury prone. And basically is a one-dimensional wide receiver. He's a straight line guy.
Exactly.
And I mean,
maybe they still have Kenny Stills on that roster.
I forgot David Johnson was still in the league. I mean, he's so irrelevant now. I mean, it was just like, and look, again,
he had one great year in 2016 under Bruce Arians.
Right.
And everybody thought he was going to be like the next big running back, similar to, what Todd Gurley had done in LA. And then he just fell off a cliff to where last year he was basically benched in favor of Kenyon Drake.
Exactly. And, I wondered why they franchise tagged Drake. I was kind of thinking like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. You still have David Johnson, who is getting paid all this money. And by the way, it's just like, again, this trade makes absolutely no sense.
For Houston.
If
you're Arizona, you just committed highway robbery.
Yeah, I've never thought much of Bill O'Brien as just really anything. I mean, like, he's a...
He was the guy who brought Penn State back from the dead after the whole Joe Paterno thing, which you got to give him credit for that. But again, he was mostly a coordinator in New England and a rather good one. But, he's continued.
Brady will make anybody look good. I mean, let's be honest. He made Charlie Weiss look good. And how many jobs has he had?
Charlie Weiss getting canned from Notre Dame was how my alma mater lost its best ever coach. So, thanks, Charlie Weiss.
But I mean, this trade makes absolutely no sense, and it's. I feel bad for Deshaun Watson. Now, Arizona,
Kyler Murray hit the lottery.
He woke up probably just doing backflips. I mean, you think about just a young, first year QB, and think about the whole thing. I forget the coach's name. What's
Cliff Kingsbury?
Kingsbury. When they hired Kingsbury last year, and everybody was just like, dude got fired from his alma mater. I mean, what are they doing? And he actually had
a decent year.
Yeah, he had success, and Kyler Murray showed he can play in this league. I mean, they were in there. I remember watching one game against the 49ers, and they had the 49ers on the rope.
Yeah.
I mean,
this is the same 49ers team that went to the Super Bowl.
Exactly. Yeah. And I look, I love this trade for the Cardinals. Obviously, they're not going to win a division, not with the 49ers there. You can never underestimate the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
The Rams,
we'll get to the Rams.
Yeah, we'll get to the Rams in a second. But I am absolutely loving this going forward because DeAndre Hopkins is only, 27?
Yeah, I think he's going into his 6th year in the league, I want to say.
Yeah, I mean, in the prime of his career, he's, to me, the best wide receiver in the game.
Again, I think Michael Thomas, but Hopkins is in the discussion.
Exactly. I mean, you can't go wrong with either one.
And now Kyler Murray has 2 great wide receivers to throw to, right? He has DeAndre Hopkins, who is a clear-cut number 1, and now Larry Fitzgerald can he's already kind of fully transitioned into that number 2 role, but he seems to be an ageless wonder, and he's, been able to play forever and still contribute at a high level.
Exactly. And I think that's a good formula going forward. I look for them to be, I don't want to necessarily say the team of the future in that division, but that's a big, huge pickup. And literally, I mean, they traded away peanuts.
Yeah, and granted, they still have holes they have to fill, right? They still have offensive lineman holes they have to fill with that. Kenyon Drake will be good in the running back position for the time being. I still think they should be able to sign a guy off the street to kind of take third down work from him. And the defensive side of the ball, they still have some holes to fill on that side, but they're in a much better position now than they were a week ago.
Yeah, and we still, I don't know about that. I heard that they were trying to trade Patrick Peterson. We don't know if that is going to eventually happen. They'll get more draft picks, maybe build that line up.
Well, maybe Peterson doesn't want to leave now.
I wouldn't blame him. I mean, they're definitely a team to watch going forward. Here's a team that plays in the same division that's not to watch anymore, and that is the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, they are the quintessential example, and this is going to become a running theme over the next couple things we're going to talk about. They're a quintessential example of what can happen when you sign a hotshot running back to a long-term deal and how that can put you in a, let's just say, strenuous cap situation.
Yeah, I mean, now here's the details from what I've seen. By releasing Todd Gurley, they're basically going to swallow over $20 million of dead cap money, which is never a good thing. But
that's over 2 years, mind you.
Over 2 years. But they also avoided paying Gurley $10 million in roster bonuses, which would have become guaranteed in June 2nd.
Yeah.
And they also saved $5.5 million in cap. So I guess they're looking forward to, obviously, Ramsey, and there's another guy on there.
Peters.
Yeah,
exactly. And they're on the defensive side of the ball.
Exactly. But Les Snead, I mean, I thought Bill O'Brien was probably the most hated man. Nah, I wouldn't say hated, but, just despised. Les Snead, giving out those big contracts. The only one who's kind of like made it out through this, probably smiling, is Jared Goff.
Yeah, well, Jared Goff's contract was a lot of what did this as well. Right, because we talk about teams going into win now mode. We talked about this with Brady and the Buccaneers, right? The Rams, over the last couple of years, did everything to go into win now mode and put themselves in a very precarious cap situation, right? They guaranteed Gurley for a number of years at a ridiculous salary. They extended Goff for 6 years, I think like $24 million a year or something like that.
Yes.
And, of course, they traded for, Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods and those kind of guys. They've given up all kinds of draft picks.
And they're trying to trade Cooks as well.
Yeah, and they gave up all kinds of draft picks in the Ramsey and the Peters trades. So they don't have any real draft capital going forward, and now they find themselves in a precarious cap situation with now a hodgepodge running back group. The one good thing they did earlier this week is they re-signed Andrew Whitworth for 3 years, which, for me, having lived in Cincinnati as long as I did, I got to see Andrew Whitworth play a bunch early in his career. That signing was what really sparked their success in the Super Bowl run back in 2018. Without Andrew Whitworth, none of that happens.
Yeah, but isn't he 35 years old?
And he's 35 years old, but he's still getting the job done.
Yeah, I mean, look, football to me is a year-by-year sport. I mean, look at Todd Gurley. A year and a half ago, he was still all-world. And that's just like the biggest mystery, because even like Sean McVay and this Rams organization, they never really just told us. They never really gave us any details of what the situation was. It's just like, well, we just felt that it was better to just give maybe Todd a little rest, but we just kind of played what the defense was giving us. When we kind of put it all together. And I think, look, and when I say we, anybody with common sense, this guy was not the same. If you looked at him in 2017, and at least for the first 8 or 9 games in 2018, he was all world.
Yeah, and then they restrict him during the Super Bowl run. And granted, we're not medical experts by any stretch of the imagination, as we said last week, but it was clear there was something wrong with that knee.
Yeah, and come to find out now that he is signed with the Atlanta Falcons. I don't really see this much of an upgrade for the Falcons. I mean, if you look at Gurley's stats from last year and compared to Devontae Freeman, who they actually released, it's not that big of a difference.
And the question is, again, the Rams never really told us all this. How healthy is Todd Gurley's knee? We don't know. And who else do they have in that backfield right now? Do they really have anybody of any significance now that Freeman's been released?
Not that I know of.
Yeah. So, and you have to think of something else. Yeah, they have a good quarterback in Matt Ryan, who's been a consistent leader for them for 12 years. But outside of Julio Jones, they don't have any weapons either. They traded away Mohamed Sanu. Roddy White retired years ago. They just lost Austin Hooper to the Browns, a signing I love, by the way. So I don't really know what Atlanta's going to be able to accomplish with him back there, with the unknown of, is he going to be able to contribute anything at all with his injury past?
Yeah, but you know what? I'll give Gurley and his agent a lot of credit. They came out the biggest winners of all of this.
Well, I have somebody who I think came out a bigger winner in free agency. Not somebody who switched teams, but somebody who definitely got his money this week. Amari Cooper in Dallas.
Was it 5 years, $100 million?
5 years, $100 million.
All right.
Now, this puts Dallas in somewhat of a precarious cap situation because they just extended Ezekiel Elliott a year ago. And again, another example of handing a big contract to a running back where it's usually law of diminishing returns. You know, Dak's going to be playing on a franchise tag, so that's going to be a heck of a cap hit.
Yeah, they're going to try to figure out a long-term situation for him.
But because of that, you know, they didn't have the money to pay Byron Smith, who just took $82 million to go to Miami, a massively rebuilding team that I think could surprise some people. They lost Jason Witten to the Las Vegas Raiders, who I think will be a good leader there. And they also lost Malik Collins, also to the Raiders as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's, look, first of all, like, good. Screw the Cowboys. I mean, just as an unbiased Giants fan, screw the Cowboys. Whatever. I'm happy. I'm happy Amari got paid, but it does definitely leave a huge void as far as going forward. They basically had to tear down their defense, at least a majority of some of their really good defensive players, secondary.
Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith aren't going anywhere. Those are the
cornerstones. Exactly. They took care of them very early. But that's going to be interesting to see going forward. Do you honestly think they can get a long-term deal done for Dak?
Well, it's kind of interesting because it transitions off what we were talking about with the defense. You know, they signed Gerald McCoy and HaHa Clinton Dix, who, quite frankly, I think their best days are behind them. And let's face it, that defense is not in as good of a position now as it was a year ago. So I think what's going to happen is Dallas is going to be in a lot of shootouts. And if Dak is going to want to make his money, he's going to be able to prove it this year because he's going to be able to put up a lot of yards and a lot of TDs.
I mean, he's certainly capable of doing that, but, I mean, that remains to be seen. I guess that brings up the kind of interesting point that brings us back to Todd Gurley. Going forward, what do you think the market for running backs are going to be now that we've seen the downfall of the Gurley situation? Because truth be told, Gurley got paid a little bit earlier than he kind of could have been.
Right.
And, I mean, again, like, he definitely deserved it at the time, but we saw, like, basically just anything could happen, and that's a position that's just obviously the long-term solution, long-term plays has never been, just kind of like what it's been about. I mean, a good running back has 5 or 6 years at best.
Exactly, unless you're, Adrian Peterson or Frank Gore.
Yeah, or LaDainian Tomlinson,
or somebody like that. But for every one of those, you have a Chris Johnson, or you have even a
Larry Johnson. You remember Larry Johnson
from the Chiefs? Yes. God, follow his Twitter account, by the way. You will laugh your ass off. Another one is Le'Veon Bell, who had all those years with the Steelers, and they knew what the future of him as a running back was going to be. They knew the diminishing returns that were going to come, so they weren't going to meet his number. He goes to the Jets, and he doesn't have as good of a year last year.
Yeah, a lot of that was just a lot of kind of infrastructure things with the Jets, just Sam Darnold missing 5 weeks. That team just did not gel together. I don't really blame Le'Veon for that. I mean, and plus, look, let's be honest. He was away from football for a year.
Yeah, but he's going into year 7 this year. That's
right.
A lot of wear and tear on that body.
Again, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. Just, look, hey, he missed a whole year. Obviously the team fell apart. Look, once they lost Darnold, I knew that season was just right down the toilet. So I don't necessarily blame him for that. But just running backs going forward, I mean, teams, NFL is a copycat league.
Well, and that brings up a good point. Take a look at San Francisco last year. They're running back by committee, right?
Right.
With Mostert and McKinnon and Kyle Juszczyk and Matt Breida, right? They got the combined production out of 4 players that teams are trying to find when investing in one. So I think what you're going to see going forward, and I think you might see Tampa Bay do this, now that Brady's there, I think the running back by committee is going to be something that's going to be a lot more prevalent now. And, that could have impacts not only for, the big contracts for running backs going forward, and it could also have big impacts on fantasy football. I think it'll change the game, at least in the short term.
Yeah. I don't really foresee any big contracts being handed out to running backs going forward. At least not.
Saquon Barkley, maybe.
Depends. And look, again, we have to take it year by year. God forbid, God forbid, Saquon has any kind of horrific injury. I'm knocking on wood. Okay, I think you can hear that. Knocking on wood. But I think if anybody is capable, he might be the last one. Just because, he's so young and the Giants' offense revolves around him. We have to see how Daniel Jones does his, obviously, his second year. But I just don't see them taking that risk because ultimately, if you do, you're going to get fucked in the end. I mean, it's just what it is. They can, again, Saquon signed to 4 years.
Yeah, he signed up. It's 4-year with a 5th-year option.
With a 5th-year option. I think with that 5th-year option, if he decides not to do that, obviously they'll just franchise him.
No. That's not Saquon's deal. That's a team option.
Oh, the team option. Okay, yeah, okay. I mean, but look, basically, 45 years from now, we'll see how much the team gets out of Saquon Barkley. But I just don't see. I think he'll get a respectable contract. I just don't see just that kind of at least not as quick as they need to do.
Oh yeah, they're definitely going to take their time with that, especially now with the running back landscape changing in the NFL. I think Nick Chubb could be in line to get some big money in a couple years, but I think a lot of his numbers were padded by the fact that he had Kareem Hunt the second half of the year.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. And Kareem Hunt's still a young running back. I mean,
the Browns placed a second-round tender on him for free agency, so that's going to be an interesting one to see what happens there.
I guess, what have we learned from this, Reg?
We have learned, the overall point, kids, don't be a running back, because NFL means not for long. If you're a young player out there, try and find a position other than running back.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's just kind of the reality of life. And with that being said...
Yeah, and kids, if you're out there, if you can throw, try to be a quarterback, because quarterbacks have a lot more longevity, as we've seen in some of the deals that have gone down with them this week.
Ask Jared Goff. I mean, he got a $21 million bonus last Thursday.
Yeah, that's don't spend it all in one place, Jared.
Yeah. With that being said, it brings us to another, obviously a wide receiver who was traded this past week as well, Stephon Diggs.
The trade that was done, we alluded to it earlier, is that the Vikings sent Stephon Diggs and a 2020 7th round pick to Buffalo for a 2020 first, 5th, 6th, and a 4th rounder in 2021. This is kind of interesting because it benefits both teams. For the Vikings, it gets him another first-round pick because with Cousins, he kind of has his prove-it year with his fully guaranteed deal that he signed a little while back. But for the Bills, that now gets them that playmaker they need to really utilize Josh Allen's arm.
Yeah, and I think with everything the Bills have already, this is a huge, huge trade. I think it's going to elevate Josh Allen's game. It's going to take him. I like what I saw from Allen last year. I saw he made some big throws. He made some big runs. I mean, he's a big mobile guy, kind of like a young Big Ben.
Yeah,
and
well, he's more mobile than Big Ben.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, but he just reminds me of that. Yeah. They got a great offensive line. It's just a great defense. I mean, I see a lot of good things for the Bills going forward, but Stephon Diggs, especially for Josh Allen, I mean, it's going to be huge.
And they got a good young tight end in that Knox kid who really came on last year.
Yes.
So I think it's really going to open up that offense. And Sean McDermott's got a great, like you said, he's done a great job with that defense. And Buffalo's kind of a team that everyone slept on the last few years because they haven't had a lot of playoff success since Jim Kelly was there.
Right.
But if you ask me, even though Miami's improving and New England's still a question mark with what they're going to do at quarterback, if you ask me, Buffalo is the prohibitive favorite right now in the AFC East.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet against that. Again, we never know what New England has up its sleeve. I mean, just I never want to doubt Belichick or just the team in general. We'll see what they do, but I mean, Buffalo looks like that up-and-coming team. I mean, somehow, unless the Jets can put it all together and challenge them, Miami going forward, it should actually be a very exciting AFC East going forward. It's no more of the terror of reign of New England. I think that those days are over.
Yeah, I mean, outside of Buffalo, the AFC East might be the worst division in football.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You might be able to say the AFC South because Jacksonville pretty much lost all their defense, and Houston, as we said, we don't even know what Houston's doing, and we don't think Bill O'Brien does either. But
right,
Miami's got 3 first-round picks coming up this year, so they could be a question mark. They could be. I'm not going to say a playoff contender, but they can make some noise.
Yeah. I mean, well, again, all of this is just kind of just assumptions, opinions, hot takes, whatever you want to call it. We won't actually see until week 1 going forward of just how everything gels together.
Yeah.
But
so before we go into a couple other topics we wanted to discuss, I want to get your opinion on some of the other signings that have happened this week.
Okay.
Bridgewater to Carolina. What do you think?
I like it. Bridgewater is a good stable gap. I mean, he's kind of an Alex Smith kind of quarterback. I think he'll hold everything together. I don't know. He's not a franchise guy, but he'll be able to kind of hold them the same way Alex Smith did for the Chiefs. I think if they put some pieces around him, they can be a perennial playoff team. But
you have to remember the Chiefs started, I think, 10-0 that 2013 season.
Right. I'm not saying it's going to be the exact same thing, but I see him as the same model as obviously a team that's rebuilding.
Yeah, and who knows what kind of coach Matt Rule's going to be.
Exactly.
He could come up with something that, completely revolutionizes the league in the same way Andy Reid did in Kansas City.
Right. And Bridgewater, to me, I mean, look, it's a small sample size of what he's done, but he actually did lead the Minnesota Vikings to a playoff, and obviously he stepped in when Drew Brees was hurt.
Didn't lose a game.
Exactly. So he has certain intangibles that you want to see.
Now, that being said, that offense in Carolina is Christian McCaffrey, and Christian McCaffrey.
Exactly. They're going to have
with a sprinkling of DJ Moore in there.
They're going to have to do a good job of building around him. Do I see him, again, as a franchise guy? No, not necessarily. But if they build the right kind of team around him, obviously using McCaffrey as the kind of lead horse, as kind of the figurehead, I guess, for the offense, he should be fine.
Okay, so there's another quarterback signing with a different team that we should discuss here. Phillip Rivers and his 11 children to the Colts.
Did you have to bring up the 11 children? Is
Yes,
it 11, by the way?
I think it is.
Oh, my God. I feel bad for his wife. You know what? That's the perfect example of a stopgap. I've never been a big Phillip Rivers guy. I respect him. I don't know. There's something about him I just never was warm to. With that being said, look, he's only signed for 1 year. I personally think the Colts are going to draft a quarterback.
I think so too.
And just kind of use him as kind of like a bridge gap. Like just kind of like, okay.
Exactly. They just released Brian Hoyer. We don't know if Jacoby Brissett's going to be back because, again, as we discussed, I think he's a great fit going back to New England. But if you look at it, right, the Colts have a good offensive line now, especially with Quentin Nelson really showing up last year.
Oh, yeah.
They still have Jack Doyle at tight end, who's done really well. They still have T.Y. Hilton as a number one wide receiver.
Yep.
Marlon Mack really developed last year at running back.
Yep.
Now, granted, they did lose Eric Ebron to the Steelers earlier today, but I think this is a team that is well positioned that if they play their cards right, could win the AFC South.
Yeah. It's again, this year in particular, I like the experience that Rivers brings. Tough guy. I mean, he could still play.
Yeah, he's a good leader in the locker room.
Right.
And I think that's probably more the reason why they signed him.
Yeah, but it's just a long term, obviously not. So I mean, again, we'll just have to see how that plays out. But I mean, that kind of like signing was just kind of, to me, I saw it and I was kind of like, okay, well, that's good for him. He got paid $25 million. That's not bad.
All right, let's move off a quarterback here for a second. Melvin Gordon signing earlier today with the Denver Broncos.
I don't really think it upgrades the team much. As we were talking before, it's more of a, signing for Drew Lock, helping with his maturation.
Exactly, because they've had Philip Lindsay there the last couple of years, and he's outperformed, I think, what anybody would have expected coming out of college.
Yes.
They kind of lack weapons a little bit because they only have Noah Fant at tight end and Cortland Sutton at wide receiver. They did just trade Sanders last year to the Niners, who's now with the Saints, and Demaryius Thomas, who's now with the Jets. So they're a little cupboard bare there. But I think that's more to shift the offense to more of a running game so that Drew Lock can kind of develop a little bit.
And I like what I saw in Drew Lock last year. Again, small sample size, but he showed me a little bit. He showed me some toughness. Showed me some. He had kind of an intangible factor about him, and obviously, like look. I don't think Elway whiffed on this like he did with Paxton Lynch
and Tim Tebow.
Well, he didn't actually draft him. That's Josh McDaniel, but
that's right. That was no. Elway was GM by that point.
No, he took over. His first draft pick was Von Miller in 2011.
Oh, that's right. He came that next offseason.
Exactly. He did release Tim Tebow, which was a good thing, and then signed Peyton Manning,
right?
Which obviously.
Oh, that's right. He also whiffed on Trevor Siemian. That's who I was thinking.
Trevor Siemian. I think Drew Lock has more potential. From what I've seen, more ability, and he kind of has like a little bit of swagger about him too. Like I like that in my quarterbacks. And look, if he's obviously everything is going to be on that second year. Now they have game footage of him. Now they can make adjustments towards him. But I actually like that. That particular pick. And Melvin Gordon, I think, is just there to kind of help, again, with that maturation process.
Yeah, because I think Elway's finally realized, along with Vic Fangio running the defense,
yes,
that they kind of like really need to take their time and let him develop, especially now that they're in a division where Patrick Mahomes is going to be dominating it for the next few years.
Oh, the next decade.
Yeah. The Chargers, where they have a lot of good players, but we don't know who their quarterback is going to be unless they're committed to Tyrod Taylor. But then that brings us to another free agent signing that happened this week. Marcus Mariota to the Las Vegas Raiders. That still sounds weird to say. How do you think he's going to fit in Gruden's offense alongside Derek Carr?
I think he's going to be carrying Derek Carr's bags. I don't think he's going to see the field at all. I know there's rumblings about John Gruden and Derek Carr not getting along and this, that, and the other. I mean, Derek Carr had, at least stats-wise, his best season. I mean, I think obviously he has more talent than Mariota. We've seen what Marcus Mariota is. We have 5 years of footage to see what this man is.
And his ceiling is very low.
It's very, very low. I mean, I can't even put into words what Marcus Mariota is. He's just like, I mean, you know how they used to call Brady Quinn Captain Checkdown? I mean, it's just like, no, he's going to be carrying Derek Carr's back.
Actually, you know who he kind of reminds me of? And I'm going to go back on this reference. Mariota's career kind of reminds me of Andre Ware's. You remember him from the Houston Cougars back in the run and shoot offense? He gets drafted by the Lions, number 3 overall in 1990. And he just never really develops into the quarterback that his college game tape would suggest that he would be.
I don't even know if Andre Ware lasted 5 years.
In the league? I'm not sure if he did either.
No, we have to look that up.
Well, he did have Barry Sanders in his backfield, so that might have helped him a little bit. But, maybe a reason that Mariota was brought to Oakland was to have a suitable backup for Carr. Because if you remember, back in 2016, when Carr had his great season in terms of wins and losses, I know statistically he had his best year last year, when he broke his shoulder in the second to last game of the year, right, their backups were Matt McGloin, who was at Penn State under Bill O'Brien, has basically been a career backup his entire career, and fellow Walsh Jesuit High School alum Connor Cook, who won a Rose Bowl with Michigan State and played like absolute shit against the Texans in that playoff game back in the 2016 postseason.
Yeah, he also stiffed Archie Griffin, so I have no respect for that guy whatsoever. Anyway, actually, I think it was his finger that he broke, not his shoulder.
No, Derek Carr? No, it was his shoulder.
Was it shoulder?
It was a shoulder.
I could have sworn it was his finger. Anyway, with that being said, yes, I don't think Derek Carr's job is in any way being challenged by Marcus Mariota. Mariota's there as protection. I mean, he's a capable backup.
And maybe Mariota was brought in to help Carr elevate his game because maybe Gruden's not completely sold on Carr and wants to put the pressure on him a little bit.
And again, we don't know if Gruden's going to draft another QB, maybe 3rd or 4th round. I mean, we'll see what happens. John Gruden loves any college QB.
Well, exactly. Like if you remember his old, elite QB camps, which were just some of the most entertaining television ESPN's done in recent years.
Oh yeah,
yeah. According to Gruden, every guy's just awesome.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see how that plays out, but I think Derek Carr is the guy going forward. So I mean, we'll see how that plays out.
All right, so there's one final free agent signing that I want your opinion on. Emmanuel Sanders to New Orleans.
I love it.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really, really good fit in that offense. Of course, you have Michael Thomas, who, as we've discussed, I think is the best wide receiver in the NFL right now. That might be a little bit of my Ohio State bias creeping in here. But I think that really, opens up that offense in a way that maybe they wouldn't have had in recent years, right? They haven't been the strongest tight end. Kamara played a little hurt last year. So I think that really helps them out.
I mean, Sanders still has a lot left in the juice. I mean, it's just like, the way he kind of uplifted that 49er offense last year when he was traded. He's a perfect complement receiver to Michael Thomas. And you still have Kamara. Who's their tight ends? I don't think they have any. But, I mean, look, Drew Brees is still a stud. I mean, if they keep him upright, I believe that, obviously they're still going to do wonders. It's going to be fun to watch them in Tampa, see who is going to, kind of take control of that division.
And we have Brees versus Brady twice a year now.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that. And you can't go wrong with that.
And the TV networks are salivating over that one.
Of course. Hopefully they're both healthy. When
they are both in their 40s, and that is no guarantee. And speaking of age, Emmanuel Sanders is going into his 11th season this year?
Yeah, he's been around. I mean, quick fact, him and Antonio Brown were actually drafted
the same year.
Same class, 2010.
Yeah, it's hard because you don't think Emmanuel Sanders is being as old as he is.
No. He's kind of flew under the radar. I remember, even
Then he had that breakout year in 2014 in Denver as the number 2 to Demaryius Thomas.
Yeah.
And he's always really served well in that number 2 role, even when he was behind Mike Wallace.
Again, and he still has plenty left. I think it's a great signing by the Saints, and it's gonna be the NFC South is gonna be so much fun to watch.
Yeah, and Breeze just re-signed for 2 more years as well. Fun fact: rumor has surfaced that he, as recently as the Pro Bowl, he was telling guys that he was going to retire, and then something happened to where his mind changed, and he re-signed for 2 more years. And quite frankly, I think he still has a lot left in the tank. Like we said, he had that 30 completion game on Monday Night Football at the end of last season. But for every quarterback that we do know where they're going, there are quarterbacks for 2020 where we don't really know where they're going to be yet.
Yeah, I guess you're speaking primarily of 2 guys, Cam Newton and Andy the Red Rifle Dalton.
Yeah. This seems like forever ago now. Actually, funny story. Back in 2011, after he had been drafted, and he shows up in Cincinnati. You remember, this is the lockout, right? So they can't have organized team sort of stuff.
Right.
My sister was a student at the University of Cincinnati at the time. I go to the campus, I have lunch with her. I'm walking by the stadium, and I'm seeing Andy Dalton conducting workouts with the receivers, trying to build a rapport with them. Because, again, he's a rookie. A.J. Green's a rookie. Right. And just the fact that I was able to see that in person, look down at the stadium, was pretty cool.
It's funny how both guys are still on the contract, obviously, and are seeking trades, but there's no market for them.
Well, we don't know what the market is yet.
I mean, from all reports, I mean, does 2015 seem that long ago? I mean, Cam Newton dabbing his way to the Super Bowl.
Going 15-1?
I mean, I don't know if he was a unanimous MVP, but I mean, he was clearly
the clear best player.
Yeah, and I mean, again, wow, it's incredible. You hear some guys say, does Cam actually love the game, or does he actually just love being a superstar?
Well, he definitely loves being a superstar. We all know that.
Yeah, but I mean,
the two aren't mutually exclusive.
No, but again, I guess that was saying, I want my quarterbacks to be boring. I want my quarterbacks to be nerds. I mean, I want them to just care more about watching film and being a part of a team. Because even if you take a guy like Tom Brady, as big of a superstar as Tom Brady is, I was going to say was, but is, I mean, he was always involved in just anything, like as far as just like workouts, being there, OTAs, well, maybe not OTAs, but just any kind of workouts, and he was a team guy, and
he'd help guys get in better shape and things like that.
Exactly. And I don't know if Cam is that guy. We're starting to hear things now, and probably we've heard things in the past of Cam, obviously just being a selfish player, just caring about his own image, his own brand.
Well, you have to think of something else, though, in the comparison between Cam Newton and Tom Brady. I'm not going to say that this is true for everybody, but if you remember back in college, right, he won national championships with 2 different teams.
Yeah, his junior college team, and then obviously with Auburn.
No, 3 different teams then. He was a backup to Tim Tebow at Florida.
Right.
Yeah. So he does that. Then he has some trouble, goes to Blinn, wins the junior conference championship there, and then goes to Auburn, and he's the biggest name in college sports.
Right.
Now, granted, there are guys that can handle that well, but there are young guys who maybe don't handle that as well and deal with that with a sense of arrogance, which, we've seen that out of Cam over the course of his career, as compared to somebody like Tom Brady, who was a 6th-round pick and always had to prove himself.
Right. Cam's a bit of an odd fella to me. He's obviously, look, he has tremendous gifts. We've seen him display that. His biggest problem is he's not consistent. He'll give you a little dose of that and then just be average.
Exactly. And he has a build to where if you can utilize that size at the quarterback position, it can really be, devastating the opposition, as we saw in 2015.
Right. And I guess going forward, especially for a guy like Cam Newton, he's probably going to have to humble himself a little bit, be a backup somewhere.
Now, the question is where? Now, I have a place I'm thinking of. Where are you thinking of?
Honestly, I don't have an opinion on where I think. I don't know. I'm trying to. I perhaps I haven't given it much thought. I don't really have an opinion on where I think he can end up.
Chicago.
They just traded for Nick Foles.
Yeah, well, yeah, but Foles always gets hurt.
Yeah, but Foles in a backup position thrives.
True, but again, Foles always gets hurt. And let's face it, I don't think Foles is enough to scare Mitch Trubisky. Because we know the Trubisky experiment is ending after this year.
Yeah, he's not very good. How would you like to be Chicago traded up when you had Watson and Mahomes?
They traded up one pick. If they even stayed where they were, because we knew the Niners were going Solomon Thomas.
Exactly. I mean, you know what? I guess that remains to be seen. I mean, does anything shock me at this point? No, but do I think he'll end up in Chicago? I don't think so. Not with the Foles trade, but I mean, look, I guess it just remains to be seen. Andy Dalton, though, where do you think he ends up?
I think there's a decent chance he ends up in New England.
I think so too. I think he's actually a perfect New England system quarterback. I mean, he's smart. He's very limited, I guess. I mean, his upside is not.
And I think having A.J. Green all those years definitely helped that upside.
Yes, but I think with a coaching staff like the Patriots, with, just the, I guess, schematics that they run there, I think he could thrive there. I think they're not going to give him, obviously, too much to do. Not that, Cincinnati did, but I think just in that kind of culture, which I think plays a lot.
Exactly. I think he could be a good bridge quarterback, like the story I told earlier of, me witnessing him working with guys in the offseason before he had even been in the locker room, right? He is a leader. He can kind of get a team to transition from Tom Brady to whatever the future is going to be under a leader like Belichick. I think him and Belichick would be a good match together.
Yeah, I think so too. But I mean, they do have that. I can't pronounce this guy's name. What is this? Stidham. Jared Stidham, who was another star from Auburn from a few years back. Now, if they were to bring in a guy like Dalton, I think he would be obviously a backup.
You think he's going to back up Stidham?
I think so. Stidham's been there for a year.
Yeah, but Dalton's been a starter for a number of years. If anything, you give him the Eli Manning treatment.
Which is
you play under another veteran quarterback for half to a full season, and then you transition to the new guy when ready.
Well, I mean,
it worked for Carson Palmer under John Kitna. They benched him for a full year.
They made a playoff run. I mean, back in 2003, they actually made a legit playoff run.
Under Kitna.
Under Kitna, and Marvin Lewis's first year.
Then they lost the Ravens the last week of the season.
Exactly. So I could see why they kept Carson on the bench. But I mean, look, I'm not against having, obviously younger QBs compared to a veteran QB, especially a guy with Dalton who, I mean, look, people will take their shots at him, but he has led the Browns, the Bengals to the playoffs on 2 occasions.
Yeah, exactly. He's gotten, he led them more than that.
3?
4, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they lost in 11 and 12 to the Texans. One of them being T.J. Yates' quarterback.
Yes.
Yikes. Then they
Yikes.
Yeah. Then they had that brutal playoff game against the Steelers with the Vontaze Burfict hit. You remember that one?
Oh yeah. Oh, that was I guess that's the game where Antonio Brown officially went crazy.
Yeah, I think that was the concussion that spurred everything we've seen for the last 5 years.
Yeah, and I almost forgot about that. Yeah. Okay, I mean, look, I guess, and again, knowing Belichick the way that we do, not obviously personally, but see the way that he runs, he's going to give every guy the benefit of the doubt, the opportunity to win the job. So It wouldn't surprise me, even if they bring in Dalton, that Stidham still gets the...
Yes, you said it right.
I have trouble with certain names. I don't know why, but it wouldn't surprise me if Belichick, obviously, he's going to go with the best guy who gives him the opportunity to win.
Which is what he's done his entire career.
Exactly. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But it's funny. I mean, these two guys who have had success, they've both done a very good job for their organizations, but they're just, I guess in Cam's case, it's just like, okay, it's just time to move on. We're rebuilding. And in Dalton's case, it's just like, we've gone as far as we're going to go.
And of course, we all know they're going to draft Joe Burrow number 1 anyway.
Of course. And then why just have that kind of, although it'd be interesting to see him like back up.
Yeah, maybe you keep Andy Dalton in the locker room just to bring Joe Burrow along.
Exactly. But I think they're going to just go, obviously, all in on Joe Burrow and then just kind of see how everything plays out.
Yeah, well, those are 2 guys who are currently under contract where we don't know where they're going to be next year. We also have a few players out there who are complete and utter free agents who have no tie to anybody right now, and we got to see where they're going to end up.
Yeah, Jadeveon Clowney, and we have Mr. Jameis Winston.
God, that's... I'm going to be honest. What kind of team would want to take a flyer on him?
You know, Jameis... You know, he has ability. He clearly can play. I just think this decision making, and that's very key.
His maturity has been in doubt ever since he was at Florida State, and has remained so up until now.
Well, yes, to an extent. Obviously, look, it's more or less the thing about Jameis Winston. As of right now, as of the last few years, is he's never gradually taken that next step to being the guy who they thought they drafted at number 1 in 2015. He still makes the same mistake. I mean, he probably had his worst year, even worse than his rookie year. I mean, it's just 30 interceptions. I mean,
exactly. Like, they drafted Jameis number 1 based off of his upside potential. Right. But he has got he's the lowest floor of probably maybe any quarterback in the league.
Right. I mean, he can play. It's more or less
for every game that he throws, 500 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns, the next week he'll show up and throw 4 or 5 passes to the other team.
You know what? I think, and believe it or not, New England. I think that could be
him and Belichick. I would watch that reality show in a second.
I think in that kind of environment, in that kind of, just kind of, just that mindset. I think he's going to take away something from getting away from the Bucs. I mean, obviously, not being re-signed, whatever you want to call it. But I think that kind of mindset of just being humbled. I honestly think he's probably going to be a little bit humbled by this because think about it. A team that drafts you number 1, they let you play out your 5 years. And then they basically said, okay, we're going to move on. I could see him going to a place like that. I think a place, a locker room with a strong culture, maybe even a Pittsburgh.
Where I could see him going, complete opposite side of the country. I could see him in Seattle. Backing up Russell Wilson. Because if anybody is going to improve his decision-making and maturity, it's going to be Russell Wilson. We talked about people who like their quarterbacks boring. Russell Wilson is like vanilla ice cream. He's a glass of milk. He's wallpaper.
So you think that'd rub off on Jameis?
I think it could.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. But the fact that a guy with that much ability basically, again, has no
home right now.
Has no home. And I guess the other big name is Jadeveon Clowney.
Speaking of Seattle.
Yeah. You know what? The league always needs a good pass rusher, a good edge guy. Maybe his
also another former number 1 overall pick.
Exactly. Yeah. Back-to-back years, actually. Yep. Maybe his price tag is not what teams want to go at.
Yeah, and this late in free agency with how many big names have been signed so far, I don't think he's going to get the kind of money he's going to want. Because, again, his problem throughout his career has been inconsistency. It took 3 or 4 years for him to become a lot like the player that we saw at South Carolina. If you remember the Outback Bowl where he popped that Michigan kid's head off.
Oh, yeah.
And then he goes to Seattle last year and ends up being a major contributor to a team that made a playoff run.
Right. And he played very well.
He did.
I mean, he obviously made a clear difference. It's just one of those things where, again, maybe what his opinion of himself doesn't match what, like the suitors want. It's just kind of one of those things of, look, put it this way. He's going to sign with somebody. It's just going to be for a lower tag and probably for a year.
Yeah, maybe he does like a 1-year prove-it deal with a team that really does need a pass rusher. can't really think of where he'd be rumored to go right now. But again, in this league, you always need one. So he's going to get scooped up by somebody. If not by now, then definitely by training camp.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, and he's too good not to. Again, especially, I remember watching that game against it was actually probably one of the best games. It was the best Monday night game against Seattle versus San Francisco.
It's an excellent game.
And he was a difference maker.
He played like a number 1 overall pick that
Exactly.
night.
I guess his problem has always been just his motor. I mean, he just does not go balls to the walls just every single
He takes plays
play.
off.
But when he does, he can be that difference maker. I don't have a timetable of when I think he's going to sign, but I think for sure somebody's going to scoop him up. I'm interested to see who, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see, especially, with a guy of that kind of ability when he wants to play.
Yeah, and one other big name that's still out there, and I'm not surprised that he's still out there, and I'll get to why in a second, is Robbie Anderson, wide receiver who played for the Jets last year. And I think a reason a lot of teams are hesitant to sign him is because this year's draft class is loaded at wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, Robbie Anderson, he's a one-dimensional guy,
Exactly, he's vertical.
Yeah, just like a vertical guy. I can't really say he established himself as just kind of a potential number 1 or even number 2 guy. Maybe I haven't done enough, background on him to know what he's really about. I just know that he's very fast. He's a good deep threat guy, but maybe his asking price is a little bit too much as well.
Yeah, and again, with all these new receivers that you have coming in, they're younger, they're fresher, and who knows, they might have a better skill set than Robbie Anderson has. Like I said, he'll be another guy who ends up somewhere. Could be a 1-year prove-it deal.
Yeah, exactly. I'm surprised he hasn't re-signed with the Jets. I'm pretty sure they'd want him back.
I was just going to say, when's the last time the Jets had a great receiver in his prime? And we're not counting Brandon Marshall. He was a little over the hill by that point.
I'm thinking
Wayne Krebet.
Keyshawn Johnson?
Maybe Keyshawn Johnson, yeah.
Keyshawn Johnson back in 98 or 99.
Yeah, before he went to the Bucs.
Yeah, wow. Think about that. 20 years. 20 plus years. And, again, that's another guy. Speed obviously is an essential in the NFL. Somebody's going to sign him. I'm just wondering because, again, I don't have enough information to know I don't know what he's asking for. I don't know what his agent is, asking for. So that's going to play itself out somehow.
Yeah, but again, it's one thing that will be interesting to see is where all those new wide receivers and everybody else coming out in this draft is going to end up, and that's pretty much the next big order of business for the NFL. That's going to be a little bit over a month from now. I think that we are going to have a schedule release in between then and now, but in terms of player movements and how these teams are going to look going into the season, the draft is really going to be the next big step to see what the 2020 NFL season is going to look like.
What do you think? We have a 2020 NFL season?
Oh, I think we do.
Yeah.
The start might be delayed with everything that's going on right now because there's just so much unknown. But with that, and I want to preface this whole podcast with one thing. It is now, as of right now, 7 p.m. on Saturday, March 21st that we're recording this. For all that we know, there might have been additional moves made during the recording of this show. So that's how fluid NFL free agency can be.
Yeah, and obviously things are going to change. And obviously from now to next week, things will transpire. So we'll wait and see what happens. Hopefully some of these guys will find some homes and we can have more things to talk about in the upcoming weeks because this is essentially everything that we have to talk about.
Yeah, let's do our research on horse racing and Australian rules football.
Horse racing I'm good with. I don't know about Australian football.
Well, if you look at Pat McAfee's Twitter, he was promoting the hell out of that yesterday.
Pat McAfee's a different kind of guy, though. It's, enjoyable to listen to.
Fun fact, one of his college friends dated my sister for a couple of years.
How'd that work out?
Well, yeah, dated as in past. But anyway, that is it for our NFL free agency recap so far. I am Regis.
I am Reggie.
And thank you guys for listening. Have a good one.
And we are out.